Hello again. I'm back to my storytelling. But anyway, that same guy I worked with in Bernie, California, his name was Dave, and we were in Lake Tahoe logging, and I ran the loader, and I'd fall some trees on the side if he needed it, and if he needed me to drive a logging truck home, I'd bring a load home every now and then. But mainly logging, and Dave Dave was such a good guy, but he was a hardcore drunk, and he was running his business into the ground because he was drunk every day. So anyway, I'm up there in the woods one day, and this happened quite irregularly. I'm up there in the woods one day, and I'm loading logs, and I got about 8 or 9 trucks to load there, and I had little breaks in between the loads, and I'd deck a few logs and maybe eat lunch or whatever, have a cup of coffee. And I see Dave's truck coming around the corner or not his truck, but his wife's car coming around the corner. And she goes, and she pulls up and stops, and what was her name? Oh, might have been Sue. Might have been Sue. I think that was Sue Kopanger. Anyway, she pulled up, and she goes, Randy. She waves at me, and I turn the loader off. She goes, Randy, have you seen Dave? And I went, yeah, he's here. And she goes, well, where's he at? And I said, well, he come over here wanting to tell me how to load these logs, and he's stumbling around out here in front of me in the loader, and I got logging trucks going in every direction, so I drug him over there under a tree. And she goes, is he out? And I went, oh, he's out. So anyway, she went over there, and I stopped the loader and went over there with her. Dave's laying under that tree where I laid him, and I didn't even think about the sun coming up. Sun come up, he's laying there with his eyes looking straight at it. Goofier than a stinking wood rat, drunk, and she wakes him up, and she goes, and Dave goes, I'll get up and I gotta load some logs around here, and she goes, you're not loading logs anywhere. You're going home with me, and Randy will take care of everything. And he goes, all right, I guess so. He said, but she goes, do me a favor. Next time you dump him over there under a tree, point him away from the sun. And she goes, he's going to be blind for a week. And I went, okay, I will. So I'm back loading logs. But anyway, a couple days later, Dave knew I didn't drink. A couple days later, Dave comes up to me and he goes, I need to talk to you. And I said, okay. I turned the loader off, and he says, you know all these water holes up and down through here where you fill up them water to run our water trucks? I said, yeah. He goes, did you notice there's beer in all of them? And I went, yeah, I noticed there's beer in quite a few of them. And he starts crying, and he goes, you've been a loyal employee to me. You ain't never done nothing wrong. And you drink Pepsis, and I fill them damn water holes full of beer. He said, from now on, there'll be Pepsis in every one of them. And I went, okay, Dave, that's fine. And he goes, I can't believe I would do that to a guy who's been so loyal to me. But anyway, I'm up there at the house one night in Pondosa. That's about 30 miles away from where he lives. Well, him and my half brother Kenny had got drunk in one of the old sportsman's bars there in Bernie. Well, Dave, about 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm laying there with my wife, sound asleep, and a knock on the door, and I thought, who could this possibly be? And I get up, I walk over. It's Dave. He's standing at the bar, and he goes, I have to talk to you tonight. And he's bawling. And I went, what's wrong, Dave? And he goes, I've been drinking with your brother, Kenny. And I said, okay, is he out there? And he goes, no, he ain't with me, that son of a bitch. I said, what are you mad at Kenny for? Well, I've been drinking with him all night, and he told me that you said I was an asshole. I said, Dave, I've never said you were an asshole. But he waking me up at 4 o'clock on a morning when I'm off makes me think you might be one. And Dave goes, I don't want nobody thinking I'm an asshole, especially not you. And I went, Dave, my brother Kenny was just playing games with you. He was just trying to do just exactly what you're doing. And Dave goes, so you didn't call me an asshole? I went, no, I didn't call you an asshole. I wouldn't. I said, now I will, because you just woke me up. And he laughed. And anyway, he was a good guy to work for. And I always had a lot of fondness for Dave. But anyway, he was quite the character. My brother Kenny, told in that same story, is quite a character too. He had went over there to this bar in Bernie called the Sportsman Club or the Rex Club or one of them clubs over there. And anyway, somebody gave him a bunch of crap and somebody kind of pushed him around a little bit, and there was a whole bunch of them, and he didn't like it. And the bartender, or the guy that owned the guy, had been in on it a little bit. Well, I was talking to an old friend of mine, and I asked him, I said, have you seen Kenny lately? And I said, no. And he goes, man, he really pulled one that was funny the other night. I said, what did he do? He said, you know the old Rex Club over there, that great big heavy-duty bartender that works in there? I said, yeah. He said, you know, he gave Kenny a bunch of crap one night over there. And I said, yeah, I heard about it. I said, I figured it was just drunken babble. And he goes, well, Saturday night, after the bar was closed, there was 2 or 3 of the guys that I know were sitting in there, and they said, the guy got over to clean up. He was cleaning up the bar, and he went over by the front door, and he could see somebody running down the road, he said, up there. And they said, it was your brother Kenny. And he was running as fast as he could right down that street toward the bar. So they said that bartender walked outside kind of being cocky. And they said, as Kenny come by at full blast, he hit that guy, and he said he knocked him as cold as I've ever seen a man. He said that guy hit the floor, and Kenny never even slowed down. My brother Kenny was a character, but man, he was a good log cutter. I always prided myself on being a pretty fair log cutter. And I could cut with the best of them, but I'll tell you, he was the best of them because he just cut log. The professionals, the pros, would cut logs for 5.5 hours. And they wouldn't take a lunch break. They just cut straight through. You'd start in the morning, say 6, and about 11:30, you're done. And they'd eat on the way home, if not get drunk. And back then, when people were making $3 to $4 an hour, we were making $100 to $150 a day for them 5 hours. So big money difference. And hard work, though, man. It was some work. It sure separates the men from the boys real quick. But anyway, that's another one of my stories I figured I'd tell you. Thank you very much.